Fury 325 is a Bolliger and Mabillard Giga Coaster located at Carowinds in Charlotte, North Carolina. And this past summer, I got to go back to Carowinds and revisit this amazing coaster. So today I'll be talking all about it, going through layout, talking about it, what I like and dislike with the ride, and giving it a final score out of 100 at the end of the video. Alright, so for the layout, you'll come out of the station, go into a little straight section, and start to ascend your 325-foot tall lift hill. And then after you crest over the top of it, you'll go into your 320-foot 81-degree drop. Now, this drop is a lot of fun. It lasts a really, really long time. It's very steep, very big. It's kind of gradual, so it doesn't give the best air time. It's kind of overrated, but it's still a fun drop. Then at the bottom of the drop, you get some pretty good intensity. Then go into your first bank turn, a 182-foot tall barrel turn. So basically, bank up to the left, and at the top you bank over to the right, do a right over bank at the top, then bank left, and then dive down. It's a really cool element. And then to a left bank turn that goes into a right bank turn to get some great laterals and some good intensity and airtime. Then into a left turn that goes over the entrance, which is a lot of fun, and then to the treble clef, which is my favorite part of the ride. So it's basically a large, pretty forceful half loop up, and then at the top a awesome wave turn, which gets some nice floater air time, and then a dive down, a twisting dive down under the entrance, which is called the high dive, which is a really cool element. I love diving under the main entrance. It gives a great head chopper, and then it'll pull up into a bank turn, which does kind of lose some speed. It does kind of ruin the pacing a bit. And does slow it down, but it's honestly not a huge deal. And then you'll go into a pretty awesome airtime hill. It does have a trim, but it does get some nice ejector air, especially in the front. In the back it's good, but in the front it's definitely a lot better. And then drop off that and go into a helix, which is definitely the worst part of the ride. It loses quite a bit of speed, but there's a nice head chopper with one of the supports, so that's kind of cool. You'll go into two more really strong moments of ejector air, got some decent bank turns, then one more floater air time one, and then into the brake run. So that's about it for the layout. So talking about what I like with this ride, this is probably one of the most fun coasters I've ever ridden. Up there with rides like Millennium Force and Twisted Timbers, there's just a lot good with this ride. A lot of really fun bank turns and airtime moments. The interaction with the entrance is great, going over and diving under it. You can get really close to this ride, walking into the park, which is really cool. I think it just makes for a really cool experience, getting really close to that coaster when you're walking into the park, especially if there's a train going. It's just really cool seeing that thing fly over those bank turns and dive underneath you. It's just a really cool experience. The drop is pretty fun. It's pretty intense. Those bank turns in the first have great airtime laterals. And they're pretty forceful, just very fast paced and pretty fun. Not as good as like the I-35 bank turns, but they're still pretty fun. After that treble clef, when it comes into that turnaround, it does lose some speed, but honestly it's not the end of the world. Those airtime moments at the end are really strong. Some of the strongest B&M airtime I've ever experienced, up there with Goliath at Six Flags Over George's ending. It's really good. The helix is not great, but those airtime hills are very fun. Even the trimmed one is really good. The helix does give a nice head chopper, and it does give a little bit of force, so it's still, okay. As I mentioned before, the treble clef is my favorite part of the ride. I love that treble clef. It gets some great positive G's going up, and, the airtime at the top is pretty weak, but it still gets some cool floater, and then diving underneath the entrance is just really cool. It's a lot of fun. The whole ride is just really fun. It's pretty long. It doesn't have a lot of elements. And it does go really fast, so it does feel kind of short, especially compared to a ride like Millennium Force, which the elements are a lot more drawn out. It does have a few less elements, but because they're so drawn out, it makes it feel a lot longer. And that ride is a few seconds longer than Fury, but it's not a lot longer. I think another thing is, comparing this ride to Millennium Force, it spends a lot more time on the brake run. It has a very long brake run and a longer lift hill and drop, so that does take up some more of the track. but overall, it is a really fun coaster. It does give a fairly long ride duration. It's about a minute long, which is good. It's really smooth, pretty intense, good laterals, good airtime, good forces. It's not the most intense overall. It doesn't feel like you're going to die like a ride like Sky Ride 305, and that's why I don't like it as much. Most like B&M, like Hyper and Gigas aren't really that way, and that's why I don't like, B&Ms quite as much as like Intamins. But for B&M, it's a really fun coaster, honestly. It does make my top 15. It's really solid. It's the second best coaster at Carowinds, in my opinion, behind Afterburn. And sometimes I do slightly prefer this to Afterburn, but I just think Afterburn's more intense and more consistent, so I like it more. This is a really fun coaster. It's definitely one of the best entrance coasters out there. I love the interaction with the entrance. It's just a really smooth ride, really enjoyable. The restraints are great. The theming is decent. The operations are incredibly fast. The dispatches are amazing. That Fury crew really does a great job, not only at hyping everybody up for the ride, but at sending those trains out very fast. Like, sometimes you'll get like 40-second dispatches. They're so quick. There's definitely a lot good to this ride. It's just, I do think it's a little bit overrated. It gets quite a bit of hype, and I don't think it lives up to all the hype, but it's still a fun ride. It's still, a fun Giga coaster. It's definitely a good addition to Carowinds lineup. And one of the better Cedar Fair coasters. It's just really fun. It's cool to see this ride like right when you pull into the parking lot. I mean, this thing is huge. It, towers over everything else in the parks. You see this thing immediately once you start getting near the park, and that's just really cool. It is an icon of the park. It's one of the most iconic coasters in the entire world. It is really fun. There aren't really many complaints with this ride. It's just that it's not the most intense ride out there, even though, it does get some fun forces, some good bang turns, some good airtime moments, a good drop. Even though I do think the drop is a little bit overrated, it doesn't really get much airtime unless you're in the back row. But it's, pretty long lasting and fun. Now I do think Fury is a bit more of a front row ride. I think in terms of the smoothness, I used to think front row is a lot smoother, but now I think they're about the same, because honestly I found like the back rows to be a lot smoother in 2019 than 2017, which was interesting. Back is a lot whippier, but front just gives that wind in your face, which I like a bit more. Even though back row does give a better drop. So I'd say Fury is one of the few rides I've ridden that I think is a front row ride. I'm more of a back row guy. So definitely I'd say get a back row and front row experience, and the left edge is the best seat. Both edge seats are good, so try like the front edges and the back edges. And try other seats on the train. All the rows are good. On this coaster, it's just a very fun ride. It is one of the better coasters ridden. It is one of the better coasters out there. It's just a lot of fun. It's one of the most fun coasters I've ridden. It's pretty well rounded. It's just really solid B&M coaster. It's just a really solid ride overall. So for a final score, I'm going to give Fury 325 a solid 90 out of 100. I think it's definitely deserving of that score. It's a great ride. It's a really fun B&M Giga, and it is definitely one of my favorite coasters I've ridden. Definitely go out to Carowinds to ride it. It's a really fun coaster. So that'll be about it for my review of Fury 325 at Carowinds. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.